Thank you, Stephen. According to some artists, the colourful murals we see adorning the sides of buildings and public amenities throughout the city and beyond activate their locations by bringing the viewing public into spaces they ordinarily would not go to. The public further becomes complicit in this activation by not wishing them vandalised or painted over. The artworks are imagined as permanent rather than temporary. Yet to another group of street artists, by becoming semi-permanent, these murals deactivate the space and walls and preclude further activity. Rather than facilitate commentary on politics and society, they become a static urban collection. This talk looks at the curated spaces of 3 dedicated street art trails, each of which exhibits a different response to their setting. Through carefully choreographed and presented urban murals, these trails have curated and activated public spaces in physically diverse sites. The Melbourne Street Tours takes pedestrians on a walking tour through the narrow inner city lanes of Melbourne's central business district. The Silo Art Trail sees giant murals painted on former grain silos dotted all over the Wimmera Mallee districts of regional Victoria. And finally, in the 50 Bridges project, 50 works of street art were gifted by the Australian government to Singapore on marking their 50th anniversary since independence. I came to this topic when on the last weekend of last year's highly successful Van Gogh and the Seasons exhibition at the National Gallery of Victoria, I found myself among the crowds in the Great Hall being herded to the gallery entrance. The congestion continued inside, following the linear narrative of the paintings, but often obscuring them from view. The gallery space available and the structure of the exhibition appeared on this occasion to be manifestly unsuitable for the size of its audience. This raises 2 questions. Can a museum or gallery ever be large or small enough for their displays and audience at any given time? And does a museum or gallery really need to be confined to a set location? The manner in which today's street art actively reflects, responds, and engages the spaces they are sited in possibly offers another way of curating our collective stories. Melbourne Street Tours is a guided walking trek through some of Melbourne's most interesting laneways and streets. Starting from Federation Square, it took in the small underpass at De Graves and Flinders Streets, meandered along Union Lane to Burke Street, Stevenson and Tattersalls lanes through to Lonsdale, then returned back south to a tram stop in the mall. Interestingly, they chose not to venture into the celebrated and tourist-saturated Hosier Lane. Along the way, we were introduced to an urban typology of street art at a scale and setting befitting the narrow and often congested paths. Stickers, stencils, figurines, murals, and lettering could be found everywhere you looked, yet you had to look carefully. The scale and intensity of this work is best personified in Presgrave Place, a small laneway only a few metres wide behind Collins and Swanston Streets. One of the most carefully curated art venues in Melbourne, and one of its most self-regulated. Various artists, including those known for larger murals, have created a tiny gallery on a limited length of available wall space. You need a good deal of time to examine the sheer number of artworks, and you are forced to come in close. In 2 of the examples shown here, a spray can and lemon incorporated in the artwork provide the relative scale. The Silo Art Trail, in contrast, has become arguably Australia's largest outdoor gallery. Conceived in 2016 and stretching over 200 kilometres in the Wimmera Mallee districts of northwest Victoria, the murals painted on disused grain silos create a cultural link between the neighbouring towns of Patchewalloch, Lascelles, Rosebery, Brim, Sheep Hills and Repugnant. As one silo artist put it, the project was about making art more accessible, bringing art out of the galleries and making it part of people's everyday lives. By activating the otherwise bare surfaces of the silos, the murals depict a unique story about the host town and the people living there, and engage the local communities and outside visitors alike. The trail started off as a single silo artwork in the small town of Brim, attracting widespread local and international attention to the plight of the town and the region. Located between the freight railway line and the Henty Highway, this mural depicts a multi-generational quartet of male and female farmers exploring community identity at a time when rural populations face severe economic hardship and the tangible consequences of climate change. A finalist in the 2016 Sir John Sulman Prize, one of Australia's longest-running art prizes, the Brim Silo mural by the Australian artist Guido van Helten became the catalyst for the creation of the Silo Art Trail. Since then, similar examples have surfaced as far away as Fallon in Queensland, Ravensthorpe, Western Australia, the New South Wales town of Wethal, and the Coorong district town of Carnarvon in South Australia. Indeed, the Brim Silo mural's mainstream acceptance and impact on a small rural community has been recently recognised through its depiction on an Australian Post $1 postage stamp. I believe that the great strength of the Silo Trail is in its ability to draw people into a region many would ordinarily ignore. Comprised of vast farmlands producing wheat and other grain crops, the region does not benefit from the snow-capped mountains, rolling vineyards, and long sandy coastal beaches common to popular holiday destinations. Yet because of its distance and isolation, engaging with the local community through a meal at the local pub, a chat to the storekeeper, or an overnight stay at a caravan park becomes part of the experience. Through such interactions, you learn more about the art and the people it represents. This image from Patchewallock of an archetypal Aussie farmer with faded flannelette shirt in fact depicts a local wheat and sheep farmer from a farming family of 3 generations who came to the region under the post-World War I Soldiers Settlement Scheme. He is married and tending to a seriously ill child without the convenience of a nearby hospital. As you learn more of the stories behind the images, you begin to understand and appreciate the hardships farming people endure. The role of youth culture and sports and sporting clubs in country communities is acknowledged in Repugnant. The wisdom gained through multi-generational farming families is shown in La Salle's. And then there is the area's young Indigenous people and the strong ancestral connections that they share with their elders, often overlooked in the narratives of regional Victoria. 4 Indigenous faces now watch over the tiny 28-person community of Sheep Hills, created by Melbourne-based Matt Adnate. The 2 elders, flanking 2 children, celebrate the richness of the area's Indigenous culture and important intergenerational exchange of wisdom. The night sky backdrop captures elements of the local dreaming. Activating space through a mural on a 35-metre high concrete silo separated from the township by a high-speed highway is not an easy feat. Rosebery, with a population of 5 at the last census, provides a good example. Disconcerted at the way in which traffic along the Henty Highway flew past the silos, the local residents devised numerous strategies to divert and hold the attention of visitors so that their personal stories could be heard. During the painting of the murals, the local shire reduced the speed limit approaching the town to 80, so that hundreds of passing motorists could slow down and watch the mural take shape. Such was the influx of visitors that the nearby gallery cafe was overrun and its patrons ended up cleaning the dishes. A policeman from a neighbouring town assisted in the kitchen. The local proprietor also recounted a personal story to us of a family tragedy, all too common in the region, which was commemorated by the painted car you see in the image. Caffeine, the mural artist who did the work in Rosebery, upon completion of the silos, covered it with her trademark images of animals as a memorial to the cafe owner, and it sits outside the cafe in perpetuum. At the History Museum, a little further down the road, which shared a room within the local Country Fire Authority shed, I was guided through a series of images depicting a time when Rosebery was a thriving community of shooting clubs, football teams, and wheat farmers who filled the newly built silos with local grain. Most of them were built between 1938 to 41, when a shortage of ships between Australia and England necessitated the long-term storage of wheat. The silos became a place for the farming communities to come together during harvest, exchange news and stories, and reconnect with old friends while the grain was unloaded. But rapid advances in grain production and bulk handling soon made their size redundant. There are now 148 silos throughout all of Victoria, most of them unused. Of late, changes in the agricultural industry have led to many communities losing their active silo sites, replaced instead by open fields with tarpaulin covers, or bunkers as they are called, and more recently, made in Argentina polyethylene sausage grain storage bags. The Silo Art Trail has provided an opportunity to reinvigorate decommissioned sites and bring attention to the local communities and our farming history. Yet, if 6 silo murals in the remote Wimmera Mallee district can activate numerous small towns and their stories and generate hundreds of visitors, then it stands to reason that 50 works of street art in a sophisticated city like Singapore would have a sizable likewise reaction. Launched in May 2015 by our Foreign Minister Julie Bishop, 50 Bridges was Australia's fun and contemporary gift to Singapore to mark their 50th anniversary. It also marked the 50th anniversary of Australia-Singapore diplomatic ties and the friendly relationship forged during that time. Using Australian and local street artists, the scale and social narratives of the works could be seen as reflecting Australia's idea of what that relationship is. Although a relatively small city-state, the wide dispersal of the art made accessing them quite a challenge. It took me multiple train journeys, taxi rides, and a lot of walking. Even then, some of the art could only be properly viewed from high-rise buildings, some over 100 metres away, or by chance on a highway from a passing